For those of you who are parents or grandparents, I am going to talk a little bit about 10 things parents should never do. And then I'm going to invite you to a free event that I am going to do with the founders of Love and Logic, Jim and Charles Fay, who I love. And it's on January 12th at 5 o'clock Pacific time. And I'll tell you about the event, but I love children, and they don't come with an instruction manual. And you don't have to have a license to have one of them, but there is very specific science on what to do to raise brain healthy children. And you want to give them their best shot. And you have a historic opportunity to really hone your parenting skills. And so I was wondering, what am I going to call this? And I just think, well, what are the things you shouldn't do? Let's start there. Number one, you should not ignore their brain. If there's anything that our work at Amen Clinics has taught me, is that the foundational piece to success that nobody talks about is the actual physical functioning of your brain and their brain. Get their brains right and their minds will be better, because your brain creates your mind. So don't let them hit soccer balls with their head. And yes, I know it's playoff Sunday in the NFL. I'm not a fan of allowing children to play sports that could damage their brain. Damage their brain, you damage their mind. And if you read my work, there's all sorts of things that go into creating a healthy brain, from sleep, absolutely critical, to what you feed them, to screen time and limiting the news and being sedentary, all of those things. But number one, parents should never do is ignore their child's brain. Two, forget what it was like to be a child. Now I am old, right? At 66, I have four. My oldest is 43. Unbelievable. Now, I adopted him, so that doesn't count. But, 4 children, 5 grandchildren. I'm just going to go have dinner with 3 of them. You have to remember, it was hard being a kid. I would so rather be 66 than be 13 again. But I want you to remember what it's like to be a child. 3, rarely spend high quality time with them. I wrote a book once called Healing the Hardware of the Soul, and in it there's a chapter called How to Make Your Child a Republican, a Democrat, or anything you want. And it's time. It's actual physical time. If you want your children to pick your values, you have to bond with them. Bonded children tend to pick their parents' values. And so one thing parents should never do is ignore their children. 20 minutes a day. In the conference coming up, I'm going to give you a very special exercise. If you say, hey, Dr. Amen, as a child psychiatrist, what's the most important thing you've ever told parents to do with their children? It's an exercise called Special Time. So make sure you show up January 12th, 5 o'clock Pacific time. And in the notes, you should be able to see the event registration. Number 4, things parents should never do. Be a poor listener. When your child says something, one thing you should never do is interrupt them and talk over and not let them finish their sentences. So many parents, they just want to pour their knowledge into their child. And I want you to look up active listening. That's what they teach therapists to do. And it's not my natural tendency. I'm a talker. But if you want your children to talk to you, you need to be quiet and listen and then feed back what you hear. Number 5, parents should never call their children names. It is shameful, it's hurtful, and it's wrong. Your children will carry your voice in their head for the rest of their lives. Sometimes my dad would do that. He'd call me like a bad name. And, I had enough of an attitude to push back, but it wasn't helpful. Number 6, be overly permissive. Permissiveness is just not good for children. Now, I want you to help them develop a sense of autonomy. And in our event, Parenting in Uncertain Times, Jim and Charles Fay are just masterful at helping you raise responsible children. And they teach how to teach children to make mistakes when the cost is very cheap. And that program made a monster difference in the life of my 17-year-old daughter. My wife, of course, wouldn't listen to me. I'm just a child psychiatrist. Why would she listen to me? But when she got a hold of the Love and Logic work, after just a couple of months, it dramatically changed the trajectory of Chloe's life. She's about to graduate from high school with 4.1 or something amazing. I was not like that in school. I'm so proud of her, but it's because Chloe was taught how to be responsible for her life. You have to attend. These people are just so great. Number 7, of the 10 things parents should never do, fail to supervise your children. You need to know where they are, who they're with, what they're doing. It's a pandemic, of course you should. But their frontal lobes, front third of their brain, actually doesn't finish developing till they're in their mid-20s. I often tell my parents, you have to be your child's frontal lobes until theirs develop. 8, things parents should never do. Be a lousy role model. Children do what you do, not what you tell them to do. And you just have to ask yourself, are you modeling health or are you modeling illness? We'll talk about that. Number 9, of the things parents should never do, only notice what they do that's wrong. And that was my dad when I was growing up. I just don't ever remember him noticing when I did something right. And that was my tendency, even though I knew it was wrong. And so I wrote a penguin book called The Most Important Thing in Life I Learned from a Penguin. At some point, I'll tell you the story. But I collect penguins because how do they train them at SeaWorld or at Sea Life Park? By noticing what they like more than what they don't. It's just a critical human skill. And principle number 10 on 10 things parents should never do: tell your child they're smart. Don't tell your children they're smart. Too often, parents are so invested in their kids. Oh, you're so smart. It's the smartest child ever. Don't do that. Praise your children for working hard. It's like, wow, you really work hard. I'm just so happy because you're a hard worker. Why? Because if you praise them for being smart and they come up against a hard problem and they can't solve it, they sort of get depressed. It's like, well, I'm really not smart. But if you tell them and praise them for working hard and they come up against a hard problem, they're going to like, oh, I can get this because I'm going to work through it. Anyways, 2 hours, January 12th, from 5 to 7 p.m. It's free. The link is below. I think it's events. Well, I'll tell you what it is because it's right here. It's events.loveandlogic.com. Events.loveandlogic.com. I hope you come. We're going to have 2 hours. It's going to be amazing. My wife Tana's going to be there. We have just some amazing testimonials, but it's going to be a lot of very practical, free strategies on how, in an uncertain time, to be the absolute best parent you can be. I hope you join us. Take care.